Sup guys, hope you guys are doing well today. Today I want to talk about how to rewire your brain for discipline. Now, discipline beats motivation in the long run. You can develop almost a healthy obsession with what it is that you're trying to achieve. It's actually possible to alter the neurons and the synapses within the brain to actually crave discipline and to stay motivated for extended periods of time. Before we get started on the video and how to actually make it happen and give you guys a rundown, just a little truth or disclaimer I want to say, and that's that you don't rewire your brain to love discipline in a sense. You rewire it in a way that associates discipline with reward, as well as a sense of identity and relief from discomfort that you may put yourself through in the act of being disciplined. So first off, I want to talk about why discipline is actually a dopamine problem, not a willpower problem. So a lot of people think that dopamine is responsible for just pleasure and the good feeling, the feel-good hormone, kind of whenever you do something, you release a bit of dopamine and you feel good afterwards. Now that's only one part of the equation. Dopamine is also released in response to anticipation and pursuit of a certain something, not just enjoyment. So for example, your brain may release dopamine when it believes something is worth pursuing, or if an action will lead to some sort of reward, or when effort will actually pay off. Now the problem with this is that in today's day and age, a lot of people's dopamine systems are wired to seek comfort, novelty, as well as easy rewards and instant relief or instant gratification. As a result of this, discipline actually feels painful because the rewards are actually delayed, and it's almost like your brain doesn't really trust it yet. And that's where you come in, and your job is to teach your brain that discipline does in fact pay off in the short term and in the long term. So how does our brain actually rewire itself? How can we achieve this rewiring process? So your brain rewires through repetition and through emotional consequence. For example, every time that you choose discipline, or if you experience a win, even if it's just a little small win, you may feel a sense of relief, you may feel pride, you may feel a bit of clarity, or you may feel a bit of momentum pushing you forward in the right direction. And believe it or not, when you feel these, your brain actually starts to strengthen that pathway. And this principle is known as Hebbian learning. And it proposes that neurons that fire together wire together, and the strength of connections within the brain are actually increased every time those connections light up through certain actions that you do to wire those neurons. An important thing to keep in your head is that if discipline is always paired with relatively negative outcomes such as exhaustion, overtraining, self-hatred, and unrealistic expectations, then your brain learns that discipline equals danger, and that can lead to burnout early on. So now that you know how it all works, what are some actionable steps that you guys can take to actually rewire your brain? And I've got 6 pointers here that may help you guys. So point number 1 is to remove the dopamine competition. You can't rewire your brain for discipline while flooding your brain with cheap dopamine. That just doesn't work. This includes stuff like, endless scrolling, watching explicit content online, eating junk food, constant stimulation on your phone or via video games and whatnot, and late nights and disregarding sleep in general. So these kind of inputs tell the brain that effort is unnecessary. Discipline will always lose against instant reward until those instant rewards actions are reduced and the disciplinary actions are on the rise. Now, I actually say that from experience because I've had a few instances where I've been quite disciplined myself and I've been on a good roll, and then something as simple as opening up Instagram or scrolling social media for a bit, and next thing you know, you're back in the state where you're easily distracted and you're putting off and you're procrastinating work that needs to be done. And just to clarify, it's not about going monk mode forever. It's about lowering the baseline so that your effort that you put into your work, into your craft, actually becomes rewarding again. Alright, tip number 2 that I have is to make discipline immediately rewarding. This is critical because when you are rewiring your brain, it's hard to care about the future and future plans, like the future you. Your brain doesn't really care about that. It mostly cares about the now. So it's super important to attach immediate reward to disciplined actions. So some examples of this include the feeling of just checking a box on a simple to-do list, or having that calm demeanor after an intense workout, or after exposing yourself to cold conditions, cold exposure, a cold shower, or an ice bath. The relief and the clarity that you get from being in that environment. Even just, if you have a list of all the wins that you've completed throughout the day, stuff that you view as, hey, I actually did a good job with this. Or even keeping streaks of disciplinary acts. So, how many days in a row that you've meditated, or how many days in a row that you've journaled, how many days in a row that you've gone to the gym or stretched, that kind of stuff. Now, the thing is to not obsess over that. You don't want to become too obsessive with those habits and tracking those wins, because that's when it can play a bad role on your mental. Now, what this does is that it creates a loop where acts of discipline lead to feelings of relief and a sense of pride and a dopamine release as well, which encourages repetition. Over time, the anticipation of that feeling becomes the motivation, and that's how discipline becomes self-sustaining in the long run. Tip number 3 I have for you guys is just shrink the task until the failure feels stupid. Motivation dies when the tasks are too large or overwhelming. The discipline is actually easier to build when success is nearly guaranteed and the consistency is there over the intensity. So an example of this would be, say you're training hard in the gym and you may be training with great intensity, but you don't really go as often as you should. A bit of compromise for this would be, instead of just going hard maybe 2 or 3 times, maybe twice a week, you show up every day for just 20 minutes and move your body no matter what. And this teaches the brain that this kind of, action is manageable and it's also safe. Our brains seek out comfort. And once consistency is established within your routine, whether it be just hitting the gym 6-7 times a week, up in the volume, the intensity may be scaled so you can go even harder and get even better results. Next up, I have linking discipline to identity. So an extremely strong motivator is identity protection. If you believe that you are a disciplined person that doesn't skip and actually shows up when the time comes, then you're actually enforcing that identity within yourself. When you skip, it actually creates cognitive dissonance, and the brain actually avoids that kind of discomfort by actually choosing discipline and aligning your actions with who you say you are internally. This is why some people with strong identities, they don't rely on motivation. It would almost just threaten who they are, who they think they are internally. And identity is reinforced through stuff, as language, who you say you are, who you think you are deep down. The environment, making acts of discipline relatively easier to do, setting up your environment in a way that enables you to do those disciplinary acts. Routines as well, how do you plan your day, all that kind of stuff. And also your social circles, who do you associate with the most? Are they disciplined people as well? Do they rub off onto you? What kind of habits do they have that enable you to work hard as well? So the 5th tip I have for you guys is to use discomfort as a signal, not as an enemy. Your brain is designed to avoid discomfort, where our brains are wired to seek comfort. So discipline rewiring happens when you teach it discomfort equals progress. Cold exposure, hard sets at the gym, focused work blocks, all these kinds of activities, they all create adrenaline as well as endorphins and that post-effort calm that you see or you may have experienced yourself. And over time, your brain rewires itself to crave the relief after the discomfort. And this is why when you speak with a disciplined individual, they may say things like, I don't feel right skipping a workout, like I just don't feel right mentally. It's not even about the physical thing. Like it almost like clashes with their identity almost when they skip a day. And that craving of relief actually trumps the feeling of seeking comfort after a while if you're consistent with your actions and disciplinary acts. And final tip is don't rely on motivation in itself. So a lot of people rely on motivation to get up and do something, and that's not really the way to do it. For some people it may work, and for some people motivation can last longer than people actually think. So motivation actually dies when goals are vague, rewards are distant, and progress isn't invisible. And it stays when feedback is frequent, identity is clear, and dopamine is actually earned instead of drained through actions such as passive consumption. The key here is to recognize that you're not staying motivated forever, but rather you're building a system where discipline fuels itself and creates a positive mental loop. So it's not really feeling motivated in a sense. If you were just to rely on motivation, you'd burn out relatively quickly, you wouldn't be consistent. But the act of discipline creates this positive mental loop that feels like motivation. Now, discipline isn't something that you have to force forever. Rather, it's something that you can train until your brain prefers it over comfort and passive consumption. Once that switch flips in your brain, quitting feels worse than continuing. So that switch only needs to be flipped once for you to have it in your mind forever and to know that feeling of being super disciplined, feeling super locked in, and craving discipline over comfort. And that ultimately is what leads to success in the long run. So that's going to do it for today. Hopefully you guys learned something new and found this video insightful. Let me know if you guys have any questions or comments, or if you found the video helpful. If you didn't find it helpful, your feedback is greatly appreciated. If you're having challenges staying disciplined, leave a comment and I'll respond with some actionable help that may help you, or someone else may respond to you before I do. But I encourage discussion in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe for more content like this if you enjoyed it. And yeah, stay hungry. Cheers.